Welcome back, guys. Ice Hockey Aussies here for the third to last week of NHL Power Rankings. We're almost there, almost to the end of the season. Only a few more of these to go. Uh, yeah, let's get us started. Myself with pick 32. Oh, I didn't think I'd see these guys back here after their little, kick-start of their season and winning some regulation games. But the Ducks are back into 32.
Yeah, no, I can't argue there. They've been very ordinary to say the least. One game in the last 10. I think they lost seven straight. They have over 100. They got 121 goals in the negative in the goal differential, and they're looking like the
It's
Anaheim that we were expecting them to see, and they didn't win a game this week. So yeah,
Yeah, and they didn't win a game last week either. So, and I think what's really, getting worse for them is they're conceding a bucket load of goals, but they're not scoring goals either. Like this week, they scored 2 goals across the 3 games, but they conceded 15. So it's
yeah,
just, yeah, it's just not going in the right direction for them at all. I don't think I, it doesn't really matter too much towards the end of the season, but generally for fans and also probably player confidence and all the rest of that going into the next season, you kind of want to finish the season strong,
mm,
right? Like there's nothing worse than going out without a win in your last 10 games to finish the season because it's like, well, crap, we really did shit the bed. Um, so yeah, for their sake and their fans' sake, I really hope they turn it around because yeah, to be on this sort of run with 6 games to go, and they don't exactly have a have an easy run home either. That
uh, there's
scouts
not
that
much
they'll win
incentive
any
to go to the
games.
stadium, is there, to watch your team? That's the
No,
problem, and.
and
Yeah, no,
they're
I'll
not even
continue.
playing competitive hockey, right? Like if
Yeah,
if your team's losing, but they're playing fun, entertaining, competitive hockey, you can sort of go, oh, it's we're in games at least. We're just not winning them. But they're getting blown out and they're getting destroyed. And I don't think anyone wants to rock up to a stadium, pay money to watch their team get absolutely destroyed.
yeah.
Like, yeah.
And this is where I think they didn't do good enough on the trade deadline. They still kept some of the bigger name players in Silverberg and Henrique and whatnot that I feel like they could have moved on. I know it's harder to move on those salaries, but they're not expensive. They're both in the 5 million. So I would just like to see them do more in the trade deadline to justify this bad streak. But
Yeah, for sure.
Alrighty, on to another team. Not moving for me, it's the Chicago Blackhawks. It's 31.
Yeah, they don't move for me either. They were very close to being the new 32 this week.
Yes.
But I think Anaheim's absolute capitulation saved them.
Yeah, I think they've lost the last eight. They're 2-8-0 in the last 10. But like you said, it's like the the three bottom teams here, or even bottom four in a sense. They're all pretty neck and neck for 32, and they're just trying to outdo each other. Um, and look, you're not expecting much after how they traded all their players out compared to a team like Anaheim. And that's why
Hmm.
I'm a little bit more disappointed with Anaheim than Chicago, is they didn't trade out some of their players. And I know Henrik's injured at the moment on the injured reserve, but yeah, no, I don't know what to say for Chicago either though. Like they what -10 goal differential. You lose all games. You only put up 17 shots against New Jersey. They took it to St. Louis and Vancouver, but they're on the bottom 16 of the ladder, not the top 16, and they weren't competitive in New
Yeah.
Jersey or Dallas games. That's my issue.
Well, I, how I don't get me wrong, they weren't necessarily in the Devils game today. They were in it on the scoreboard. I didn't like how they were playing. I thought they were definitely getting well outplayed. They they were kind of in the game the entire time. There wasn't a point where it was like, oh, the Devil they were. what they were 2-1 down, I think it was, and then it was 2-2, and then it was 3-4, I think. So like they were in the shot, and they were just they were finishing their chances, and I think that's what I like about Chicago. Like they've got a young team, they're pretty much like capitulated. Like they've got no one left, just about. They traded out pretty much anyone and everyone they could,
Doing it
but they're
Arizona.
still yeah, but they're still finding a way to sort of compete even though they're getting outplayed, and it's clear that they're getting outplayed because they don't have the talent really to keep up with teams. So that's why I'm sort of liking them a bit more than Anaheim. I feel like Anaheim, they've got the talent and they shouldn't be losing as badly as they are. Whereas in Chicago don't. Chicago don't have a goaltender. They
Mm.
don't really have the talent in their team. Um, and yet they're still finding ways to score in games. They're still finding ways to sort of, still be in the game within the last 5 minutes of a game. Like the Devils scored an empty net goal with 2 minutes to go, and then I think they scored. Um,
I think that was the empty
did they?
net with 2 minutes to go.
That
That's the
that was the last
Mercer.
one.
Yeah, with Dawson.
Yeah,
Mercer.
Mercer. Oh, that's right. Maya scored to make it 5-3 with that really good wraparound. But that was with 4 minutes to go, man. Like they scored 2 goals in the last 4 minutes to blow it out to
Yeah.
a
No, I
6-3.
think they've been basically doing Arizona. You're getting these AHLers to play, but you compete even though you're getting outshot and stuff. You're still competing, which is good.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why I couldn't put them at 32, but yeah, they're still not doing fantastically.
Yeah.
Um, all right, let's move on to P30. Um, a team that's yeah, just stayed where they were last week for me anyway. I've got the Columbus Blue Jackets.
Yeah.
And
Like I said earlier, these three teams are pretty much neck and neck, eh? Uh,
100%.
all three teams didn't win a game this week. Today, Columbus getting destroyed 7-0 by Florida. The only good side on these three teams that they've played this week is Columbus took a point from Boston, of all teams. And
I was about to say the 7-0, but it really looks ugly. But then you look at that Boston game,
yeah,
and it's like,
and that's why they get 30th for me is they take that point, and they did get destroyed 6-2 at the start of the week, as well by the Rangers. And you look at that week, Rangers, Boston, Florida. That is a hard week for any team.
yeah.
And look,
Hmm.
they took it to Boston. They get a point out of it. I'm impressed. I'm more impressed with Columbus than I am with Chicago and Anaheim at this point. Um,
Hmm.
Especially seeming the goal scoring side of things. I think they can score with Line A and Goudreau and whatnot, and that's why I couldn't have them at 31 or 32 this week.
Yeah, I think their biggest issue is they can concede as just as well as they can score.
Well,
But
this,
I
yeah,
think I said it earlier this year that one of the big problems with these guys as well is that they've got a lot of injuries. So I'm really interested to see what they can do next year. Um, bring in bring in a couple of free agency gets, and get Wierenski back into their lineup, and a couple others. So um, yeah, I don't think that they're gonna be down this low for that long. I think you should see a turnaround next year for them. Um, I think at the end of the day, it's just they probably need to get a better goaltender
yeah, that's what I was
than
about to say. I wonder
Elvis.
what they do in the off season with the goaltending situation. I think they're going to rely on
Mm,
Misleekins, but whether they go out and get a number one to go over Misleekins will be interesting to
yeah,
see.
that's what I'd do. If you're wanting to turn this around quickly, I think they definitely need a better goaltender than Merzlikins, but it'll be interesting, that's for sure.
Alrighty, moving on to 29. A team that did really good this week, undefeated. It's the San Jose Sharks, and
I was wondering if you were going to put them up any higher.
no, like they played a really good week. Like I said, they were undefeated, and they played some pretty decent teams. They beat Winnipeg with shutting them out, and then they go and beat Vegas in OT. So that's two really good wins, even though Winnipeg have been on a slide. And then they basically destroy Arizona 7-2. So
Hmm.
impressive. Obviously, they've still got flaws. I'm not fully sold on them. And look, they were being so down in the dumps with these other three teams for so long. It's harder to just throw them above any higher than the other teams that have been less than mediocre for a while. And so I put them at 29 for now, though they've done a really good week, and I think they're still only like 29th in the standings anyway, even with this
Yeah.
week. So yeah,
Yeah, exactly. It was hard to like they definitely had to go above these other three, but it was very hard to move them any further because you're right, they had a fantastic week and they beat two really good sides. But that doesn't change the fact that they had won one out of their last 15 games prior to this week.
yeah.
So
About to say they're 3-4-3 in the last 10, and those last three wins are these three games. So
yeah, exactly. So yeah, look, good. And I guess it comes back to what I said about Anaheim, right? You don't want to finish your year playing absolute dog shit hockey. You want to finish your year playing good hockey. And the San Jose are coming into the final stretch playing reasonable hockey against reasonable teams. They got a really tough run home where they basically play Colorado twice, Edmonton twice, Winnipeg and Calgary. Now that's tough for a team this low. But if they can pick up a couple of wins, play some decent competitive hockey, it gives them a good sort of, a shining light for next season to be like, look, you know, we started to sort of get some stuff together. There was things that we liked about our game style and our game plan. If we can add some pieces, go to the draft, do the right thing, who knows? We could turn it around.
hmm, alrighty, on the 28.
All right, on to 28. I've got yeah, these guys definitely could have gone below San Jose for how they played, but it just couldn't quite warrant it. I got the Montreal Canadiens.
Alrighty, yeah, I've done the
All
same
right.
thing. I didn't move on them, and like I said, it was a toss up on how much you give into the good week that San Jose had. But
Yeah.
Montreal, they start the week off strong with a shootout win against Buffalo. Then on a back to back, they only lose by a goal against Philly, and then they verse two good teams in Florida and Carolina and lose both of those, especially the Carolina game quite comfortably. So yeah, they've just been sitting here for a while. There's not much to say. Like the season's been done for a while. They obviously need to get more players in because they've got one line. They've had injuries on that one line, but at least they're competing. But
Mhm.
I don't feel like they competed too well against the Florida or Carolina games. But it was good to see them do good against Philly and Buffalo.
Yeah, and that's it. I think, we kind of knew that this was going to happen with them. They were going to sort of fall off, especially with the injury to Caulfield. Um, but yeah, that's one of the things you can say, right? Like they compete in most games, and they do get blown out from time to time, as we've seen. But they rock up, they win games, and they win games that they shouldn't. Look over this month, they beat Pittsburgh, they beat Tampa. Like they're two big teams that they really have no right in beating, but they rock up on the night and they get the job done. So yeah, it's pretty much what we expected to see with it from them, but they come through and show some shining light from time to time.
Yeah, and they've had you know, what was it, a number one pick, Slavkovsky out for like 3 months, starting in
Yeah,
January, I think it was. So when you
yeah.
lose a player of that caliber as well, it hurts.
Oh, exactly. Losing Caulfield and Slavkovsky, yeah, it's gonna cause trouble. Um,
Alrighty, moving on to 27. A team I've liked all season, the Arizona Coyotes, but just falling off the wagon a bit at the end of the season, kind of what they need to do in a sense. Just not what you want to see them do, I guess, in some respects. But
no,
they're still taking it to The top end teams, they took it to Colorado, shootout loss, and they took it to Edmonton, only losing by a goal on a back to back. But then they go and capitulate against Dallas, and then San Jose on a back to back. So they don't win a game. They take a point out of the week. That's the only grace, and the only grace is that they're still competing, even against the teams in the top 10, top 16, which I like to see.
Yeah.
But definitely falling and falling fast though.
And that's the thing, right? Like, they have to fall, but you've got to like their compete because the 2 weeks prior to these last 2 weeks, they took 14 points of a possible 16. They took those points from the likes of New Jersey, Colorado, Minnesota, Calgary, Vancouver, who's on a tear, Nashville, who are vying for playoffs. Like, they were good teams. And then they come up this fortnight and they play teams like Winnipeg, Edmonton, Colorado twice, Edmonton twice, Dallas. Like that's what, four good teams? And they lost by a goal 4 times. So they're in every single game. There's not too many games other than the San Jose game today, which we'll give them a bit of a pass for that because it's not too often you see them get blown out like that, right? They're usually in most games.
Mm,
I just think that's been one of the shining lights for Arizona this year. And if you're an Arizona fan, at least you're getting to watch competitive hockey because I think most NHL fans would have thought Arizona to get even remotely close to 30 wins this year was laughable. You probably sit there and think, I struggle to see Arizona getting 15 wins at this point.
mm,
So, yeah, to be where they are at this point in the season, 27, 37, and 13, I think you're pretty happy as an Arizona fan. And
yeah,
now you're just hoping they can slip as far as possible and just get themselves as much lottery percentage increase as possible and potentially pick up Bedard to help their rebuild because Keller looks phenomenal. They've got a few other pieces. I think Michelli looks really good as well.
hmm
Um, yeah, they've got a bright future there, I think.
yeah. And look, they got what 27 million, um, in in salary in injured reserve. Jacob Voracek, Shea Weber, Andrew Ladd, Brian Little. Like the lowest contract there is 5.3 million. That's a lot of money on the injured reserve. So if they could switch those into assets on actual team playing in the future, then that will boost them honestly probably to just outside the top 16 if they could get that sorted. But yeah, thought I'd note there
They've
salary injury issue.
Yeah, but that's the thing that they did that so well, right? They picked up assets to take on these contracts because they knew very well that they weren't going to need that money anytime soon. They get Ladd's contract back this at the end of this year, so 5.5 straight back on. They get $13 million, $13.5 million back at the end of next year because they're not going to need it, right? Like, we know that this team's not competing for a playoff spot next season, maybe the season after, depending on how they play this rebuild. And I thought that was perfectly planned by their management. They got so many draft pick assets. They're stacked. And yeah, and once they free that cash up, they use all those draft picks up, see what they can get. Maybe they use some of the draft picks for trades to bring in, NHL ready players, and they can start using that cap space. Like, I think they're on something at the moment. I think you'd be a fool to sleep on the Coyotes rebuild at this point.
Yeah, it's just issues with their I'm not sure if you heard about their stadium now with the was it the Phoenix thing trying to roadblock their stadium, submitting suits against it,
Oh, Jesus.
stating things about the airport and the distance, and then too loud, blah blah blah. Even though there's buildings already there that across the road, but apparently basically they don't want to build because they got another stadium there earning money, and this will take money from away from those millionaires and billionaires with that stadium. Um, for
Yeah, yeah.
so yeah, it's all political. People are making money doing it, and I think it should be investigated for some sort of shady dealings and corruption there. But yeah, I thought I'd note that as well.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of sad, isn't it? Because like it's just greed. At the end of the day,
Yeah,
it's just greed. You want to see them get their new stadium and go on really strong, but then there's always some rich billionaire somewhere that cracks the shits at something. So,
yeah,
um, but yeah. Hopefully it doesn't happen and they get their stadium because I'm really hopeful that they can bring hockey in Arizona to life. It'd be
yeah.
good to see.
Well, if it
All
doesn't, then I
right.
feel like they'd have to be on the move, to another state.
Yeah, I doubt Bettman does that, but yeah, you would think so.
Mm.
All right, moving on to P26. I've got a team moving up this week. They had a pretty good week and got some decent results against decent teams. I got the Detroit Red Wings.
Alrighty. Detroit
They
Red Wings. This is where we go different. I got them at 25.
oh yeah, I figured you would. I think I know the team you've got below them. Um, but yeah, for me, I just the way they've been playing lately. I know they had a good week, but I just couldn't move on them too quickly, just with some of their recent performances. But I mean, yeah, look, how good's their week, right? They beat the Penguins 7-4, significantly outshot, however, but then they also get the win against Carolina. Significantly outshot again, but again,
I'm noticing a trend
you
here.
can't take away. Yeah, right? They get outshot, but they're getting quite lucky this week. So yeah, I mean, you get a win against Pittsburgh and a win against Carolina. Um, yeah, it's got to make you feel better. If you're a Detroit fan, it's got to make you feel slightly better from the train wreck you've been witnessing the last month.
Mm.
But yeah, I couldn't justify pushing them too much further. Although I think I know why and who you've done it for.
Yeah. Well, yeah, they just had a good week. Beat two decent teams, though. I'd say the Pens are on a little slide. They do lose to the Jets as well, but 4 out of 6 points is good. Their differential is 0. The negative is that goal differential is 0, but their shot differential is -29. I think they're
Mm,
outshot in every game, and so that's why I'm not high on them. It's not, it's a +2 for me this week, but it's not a high +2. It's just the team below, I think, have been slowly declining for a while now, and yeah, there's not too much more to say on Detroit. They are doing this negative slide at the end of the season pretty well.
pretty much, yeah. They are where they are. I think
Hmm.
that's the best way you can sum that up.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to your 26.
Yeah, so my 26, probably no surprise for you, it's the Washington Capitals for me. And
Yeah, it's who I thought, and I don't blame you for it at all. They've definitely been on a slide.
yeah, they don't win a game this week. They do get a point from the shootout loss against New York, and then on the back to back, they lose 5-1 against Tampa. I just think they've been on a slide for a while, and I'm not super impressed with them. They're 3-5 and they're 2 in the last 10. The only saving grace for me is they have a even goal differential, which is better than pretty much everyone else in this type of section area. Everyone else is in the negatives, even teams above them in our power rankings. So that's my saving grace with them. But yeah, I haven't liked what I've seen for probably a month now, and I just when Detroit had the good week and Washington, I don't think has had a good week for probably a month.
Yeah, yeah. Look, I mean, I don't think they've had a good week for the last 2 months, to be honest. Since they've come
Mm.
back from the All-Star games, last month in February they won 3 games, lost 6. Sorry, won 2 games, lost 7. My bad. And then this month so far they've won 4 games. So yeah, they've won 6 games in the last 2 months since coming back from the All-Star break. So yeah, you're not wrong for for putting them that far down. Um, I could have I definitely could have justified it.
Yep.
I just didn't make the call.
So yeah, like I said,
Um,
not a strong +2 from Detroit, passing Washington and Arizona. But it's it's not bad on them either.
No. And with their run home, I can't see them climbing back up the ladder anytime soon. So, all right, let's move on to 24. I have a team moving up a couple of spots. It's the Philadelphia Flyers.
Alright.
Crazy to think the amount of points difference between Washington and Philly, yet Washington are below them.
Yeah, I also feel like that's kind of interesting in some of the positions on my power rankings this week. But yeah, I feel like Philly have been playing some really good hockey over the last 2 weeks. They beat Canadians, OT lose against Ottawa with 11 shots, scoring 4 goals. Explain that one to me. And then lose to Buffalo, outshooting him by 20, not 20, 13 shots, sorry, and they
Mm.
lose 6-3. So I don't get how you outshoot a team by basically the shots that you had against the other team and lose, and the other one
Oh,
you go you score four, but
I,
it
I know,
happens, I
right?
guess.
Explain it. Make it make sense, mate. Make it make sense. That's all I can say is like, how do you put four goals up again on 11 shots, and then you only put 3 shots up on your next 42?
Yeah.
Like, far out. Um,
But yeah, no,
but
I've been impressed with how they've been playing, what they've been doing. I think it's a well warranted 24 for me. It's still not high in big big aspect of the standings, but I think this is probably the highest they've been for probably 2 months or so.
yeah, I mean they're definitely making moves, right? Like they won all 3 games last week, and they played reasonable opponent. And then they win one, get an OT loss, and then lose to Buffalo this week. So they've definitely turned a corner as of late. Question is, you know, what is it showing? I guess it's good to finish the year strong. Um, but I don't know where Philadelphia go from here because I honestly think they're in no man's land. So
I think they've been in
yeah,
no man's
good
land
to.
for many years. They had a streak. They'd make the playoffs, then next year they wouldn't. Then they'd make the playoffs next year, then they would. Yeah, I feel like they've been in no man's land for quite a while.
For quite some time, yeah. And they need to pull the pin, pull the trigger on a rebuild. I think so.
Hmm.
Yeah, we'll see where they end up this postseason, but yeah, go from there. We'll
All
move
right.
on to your 23.
All right, a team that didn't have a bad week by any means, but it will be a team moving down one. It's the St. Louis Blues, and they win two, they lose two. Yeah, they get pretty much handed to them. 6-1 against Nashville. They beat Chicago. They OT win against Vancouver, and then they lose 6-7 against LA. So they're putting up some goals this week. 6 goals, 6 goals, 5 goals, and then one against Nashville. I've liked their play. Still not sold on them. I don't think it's a big negative one for me. I know they don't move for you. Still at the same position, but it's just really I feel like team below them, one that's not there, Buffalo, just being a little bit better than St. Louis, and that's why I made that decision, even though they didn't have a really
Yeah,
bad
for
week.
sure. And I think it's some good showing for them. You said about the six goals, 6 goals. They actually beat Anaheim 6-3 the day before. On yeah on the Sunday, just gone. So yeah, like they know how to score. And this is the tough part about them, and why I think this is one of the teams that could do a quick retool. Um, is they picked up some assets with Tarasenko and Ryan O'Reilly, and they've still got some really young, talented players in this team, or not even young, like just in that right age bracket. That if they can add some decent assets in the off season, they can turn this around because they've got players like they got 3 first round picks this year in a stack draft. Probably said last week, I reckon. And they've got the players with term on the contract and in that right age bracket to turn this around. So I wouldn't be surprised that if management make a make some good moves in the offseason if we see the Blues back in the playoffs next year.
Yeah, I would just say my big thing that I would like to see them move, though
Bennington.
is Bennington. Yeah, exactly. I didn't even have to
I
say it.
knew that's
Probably
where you were
probably
going.
everyone would just go there. Yeah,
Yeah,
but
I knew that's where you were going.
but he has no trade clause for next year, so you can't
Hmm.
move him unless he agrees to it next year. So I'm not
Hmm.
too sure if you wear that or go get maybe a goalie that can hopefully play above him when he is a backup. But 6 million backup's pretty steep.
Hmm.
But yeah, that's the move I would like to see, though I feel like it'd be hard for them to pull off.
Yeah, look, I think because who's going to take him, right? And it's a $6 million contract. It's not a small contract. So
Well, would Columbus
yeah,
do it?
it's
They need they need a goalie. So
I I don't think going from Elvis to Bennington is a is a smart move. I think you're just going from worse to worse at that point. Um,
oh well, I
but
threw it
yeah,
out
look,
there, so if it happens, I called it.
yeah,
uh,
you take that call.
I'll take the credit.
Jesus Christ. Yeah, far out. But I don't know. We'll see what they do, I guess, in the postseason or off season.
Yeah.
Um, all right, let's go to 22. And the reason why I love that, I'm just loving this one is how the hell can you fall that far at the worst time of the year? It's the Winnipeg Jets. Oh,
Yeah, you've
oh,
done the same thing as I have. Same spot. Oh, -4 as well.
I, I felt wrong for doing it. I was like, how team that was so good have fallen so far? But they got blanked 3-0 by San Jose. Like I know they beat Detroit, and so they go 1-1 on the week. You're probably thinking, how can you drop them that far? They were 2-2 last week, 2-2 the week before. But that's where they're at. This is a playoff team that was
Mhm.
first in their division a month ago. That's now looking at not even being in the playoffs. Like they right now, if you were to say, who do you think's the better chance of making playoffs right now? I'm I'm in Nashville and Calgary's corner because they are what you got. Calgary's 2 points behind with the same amount of games. Nashville's 3 points behind with a game in hand. Plus, Nashville play Winnipeg in the last 6 games. So yeah, I at this point I wouldn't be surprised if we don't see Winnipeg in the playoffs.
Yeah. The other thing was some of their best players. Like Kyle Connor. He only just recently ended his long goal drought. I think this week. I
Hmm.
can't remember how many games it was off the top of my head. It must have been like 15 or something. I'm throwing that number out. I don't know off the top of my head without doing some looking, but I know he ended it. And just for someone of that caliber that have that big of a goal drought, I think some kind of sums up where the Winnipeg Jets have been during that. So,
Yeah, for sure.
or,
It's yeah, it's not good. It's not good at all for them at the moment. They need something to go right.
yeah,
Um,
and even if they make playoffs, I can see them getting swept quite easily. It's yeah, unless Hellebuck does something insane.
yeah,
Alrighty.
and yeah,
On to 21. Team just moving up a couple is the Buffalo Sabres.
yeah, I've got them there as well. Um, it's crazy to think that they may have pulled themselves into possibly. I know it's a long shot,
Yeah,
but
I saw some
that
stats. I think it was like 3% chance some people had of this.
yeah, but the thing is that they win both their games in hand, and they're in the playoffs.
Mm,
Like this team where their destiny is pretty much in their own hands because they win both their games in hand and they are sitting level with Florida. Pittsburgh are on an absolute slide. So it's not. it's not unrealistic to think that Buffalo couldn't snag that last spot,
Mm,
especially if they can pull together a run like they have in the past, because they've got some winnable games in the last seven. They've got some tough games as well, but they can definitely win those games, and they've proven that in the past. So yeah, I'm very interested to see what Buffalo can do in these last seven games.
yeah, well, 5 out of 6 points is a good haul. OT win against the Rangers, and then beating Philly on a back-to-back. Who Philly have been a good team. Um, yeah, I don't know if I'm confident if they can put a streak together because of just how leaky sometimes they can be in the goals department. So
Yeah.
that's my only concern. I know it's a very long shot, but there is that possibility for them, and at least that's good for the Sabres fans that they have some games worth watching this late into a season.
Oh, well, exactly. I mean, look, the last five games, they've taken nine out of the possible 10 points. And that's coming up against New Jersey, New York Islanders, New York Rangers, that they've done that. They've beaten all three of those. Their biggest disappointment is dropping a point to Montreal in the last five games. So, yeah, look, it's still tough. And with the likes and the power of Pittsburgh and Florida, it's probably very unlikely that it happens. But if you're a Buffalo fan, you're probably pretty happy to still be in the race for a playoff spot this deep into the season. Like,
Mm.
I think at the start of the year, if you were to tell any Buffalo fan that you would still be a playoff hopeful with 6 games to go or 7 games to go, I think any Buffalo fan would take that. So, yeah, um, yeah, it's not a bad season for them so far.
Alrighty, on to your 20.
All right. Team moving down a position this week, but it's not. I don't know if it's warranted, but I just think the teams above one team above them played better. Or two teams anyway. It's the Vancouver Canucks.
Oh, okay, no, you've done exactly the same as I have, and the exact same thought
Okay.
process. The -1, but is like it's not fully warranted, but like you said, it's just other teams below playing just slightly better. I'd feel like.
Yeah, because like don't get me wrong, they didn't have the greatest week in terms of, they lost 2-1-1. They still took 4 points out of the week. So, you take with the rest of the performances they've been putting up as of late, especially this month. Like this month they've lost before this week they had lost 3 games and they had won 9. So 9-3 they were before this week, and they still managed to take. They moved to they still take 4 points. So I think Vancouver are probably one of the hottest teams in the league at the moment, and they're not even in with a shot for the playoffs. I think have they been eliminated yet? Um, no, they
Mathematically.
can
Mm.
just mathematically they can just make it, but I think they can get 14 points and they're 12 points out of a playoff spot. So yeah, they've come good at the
Yeah.
worst time, but they're playing some nice hockey. They still concede, which is one of the biggest concerns I think with this team.
Yep.
But yeah, look, you know, I would rather as a team, I would rather finish the year strong and competitive than finish the year like Anaheim. Just
Uh,
gonna throw that out.
if you get Bedard, then I'd prefer to be in an Anaheim situation, if they got it. Um,
Yeah, but imagine this, right? Vancouver do what they're doing, Anaheim do what they're doing, and Vancouver get Bedard.
yeah, yeah,
Like it's yeah,
I can
yeah,
see your point, but honestly, at this point, they're playing for nothing, but maybe just
yeah,
sales for extra tickets at the stadium. It's basically what they're playing
yeah.
for.
Well, they're
Alrighty.
playing to show their young team, right? They've still got a relatively young team. They've
Well,
still
yeah,
got
they got
some
to show
players that
Hughes and Pedersen that they're worth staying around for, but we'll have to see how they
exactly
go next year. That's the big telling year for them.
for sure.
Alrighty, on to 19. I have the Ottawa Senators.
We I'm one up on those. I have Ottawa at 18.
Okay. Yeah, they had a good
Hmm.
week. They go 2-1. The one loss was to Toronto getting shut out. The OT win against Philly. Only conceding 11 shots, but concede 4 goals, and they beat Florida. So a good week. Um, Probably the only surprising result was the Florida win. And look, they're one of the hottest teams right now going for this little playoff run. Um, Alongside Calgary in the West doing their side of things, and they're in the race with Buffalo as well. They've turned it on at the right time. Same with Buffalo. They're really strong. These teams are kind of neck and neck going for this, and I feel like they're playing some of the best hockey they've played all season because they're playing good and getting the results.
Mm, yeah. Like all year we were talking about them playing really good hockey and just not getting the results. I think I think Buffalo and Ottawa are going to absolutely rue that little just purple patch where they lost. I think it was what fortnight ago, the fortnight before that, where they lost games that they really shouldn't, but they were just both those teams, right as they got themselves in a playoff spot, just went on this crumble where they lost 5 or 6 games each, winnable games, and it's just yeah, I think they're gonna rue that little purple patch. Um, but it's good to see them still in the hunt because again, I think similar to Buffalo, I think Ottawa had a little bit higher expectations. I think they were sort of expecting that they would finish in a wild card spot, but I still like the fact that they're in with a chance this late in the season. I think that's some positive signs for a young side.
Yeah, no, you're not wrong. And I know they got what a new billionaire in the bid for the team, so it's good to have
Hmm.
some big money behind the backing it. I forget
Yeah.
his name is Apis blah 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 blah. Some long year I think it's European name, but yeah.
So yeah, good signs for the Ottawa Senators at this point, that's for sure. All right, coming in at 19 is the team that could potentially, who would have thought when we both thought that they could potentially go for one last Stanley Cup run and they may not even make the playoffs. The Pittsburgh Penguins just gliding at the absolute worst time.
Yeah, no,
Just
they really
yeah.
are, aren't they?
Well,
um,
they are. They're
mm,
what? They're 3-7 in their last 10 for crying out loud.
yep.
Um, and they're competitive. That's the thing. They're competing. The 6-0 walloping against the Rangers a couple of weeks ago was probably the only game they haven't really competed in. But they're 3-7-0 when it kind of matters most, right? Like playoffs are on the line and they're not getting results.
Yeah, well, they've moved out of top 16s. The big disappointing result is losing 7-4 to Detroit this week, though they outshot them
Hmm.
by 14 shots. They beat Nashville, outplaying them, and then they took it to Boston. Uh, I think the results this week don't like they win 1 out of 3. I feel like it doesn't show you how well they have been playing, but they're not getting
Yeah.
results. It's kind of doing the reverse of Ottawa in a sense, playing well, not getting
Hmm.
results sometimes. And it's like I said, a horrible time to do it. I know they're slightly in a better position in regards to like a team like Ottawa. They got 5 points ahead with the with 6 games left as well. So I still
And they have a pretty
feel
soft
like they make
draw
it.
going home.
Yeah, I feel
Yeah, they
like they
have a
make
pretty
it.
soft draw. Yeah. I mean, look, they've got Philadelphia, New Jersey, Minnesota. So 2 hard games there, but then they finish with Detroit, Chicago, Columbus. So, like they should win 4 of the last 6 of their games, realistically. And if they don't, then they probably don't deserve to be in playoffs. And I think any fan would agree with that in a sense. Like if you can't beat those 4 teams, then why are you even like what are you doing? Like, you're
But
not gonna go anywhere in the playoffs.
yeah, I
Um
will say they have been putting up some high shot counts over the last probably 2 weeks. Seeing a lot of 35 plus shot count games, just from memory. So I would just like to put that out there as well.
Yeah, they're definitely playing decent hockey. It's just they can't get the results. Like at the end of the day, if they go 7-3-0, they've wrapped up their playoff spot right now. But they didn't, and they've lost a couple of games that they probably should have won. So yeah, it's going to be interesting for them. I definitely I do think that if they make the playoffs, they can do some damage. The biggest question right now, especially when you got someone like Florida breathing down your neck, um, I just yeah, they may well and truly not make the playoffs because at this stage, Florida Florida might win their last 5 games,
Mm,
and yeah, so.
alrighty. On to 17, a team that probably hasn't moved from this position for about a month. It's the Nashville Predators. Um,
They're just in limbo, aren't they? They won't go away,
yeah,
but they won't take a stranglehold on that final position.
yeah, they sell at the deadline, then they're still in the playoff hunt. So weird little team. They lose to Toronto, beat Boston, lose to the Pens, getting shut out. Then they beat St. Louis 6-1. Uh, so mixed bag of results. A very tough little schedule there with Toronto, Boston, Pens, and then St. Louis. So
Hmm.
they're getting results that they need. They still got a tough road, and look, they're outperforming where everyone would have thought they would be after the way they approached the trade deadline. So I'm not too sure how they're going to make it. I'm definitely enjoying seeing how they play though.
Yeah, look, I mean, you look at their run home, and if they, again, I think I said this last week, if they make it with their run home, well, they deserve it because it's ridiculously tough. Like you put up Toronto, Boston, and Pittsburgh this week, and then you match it with Dallas, Vegas, Carolina, Winnipeg this coming week, and then it finishes with Calgary, Minnesota, and Colorado. Like, I'm sorry, but that's rough. You got to play the two teams that you're fighting for a spot for, and then you've got to play well, I think four of those teams, and Dallas has been in our top 10 most of the year as well. So, yeah, you've got a ridiculously tough run home. So, if Nashville make the playoffs, credit to them. I don't know how you're a seller at the deadline, still in the playoff hunt, and then you're finishing with this sort of run home. So, yeah, I'm interested to see what happens because if they make it, that's phenomenal.
Alrighty, it's starting top 16 with you.
Starting top 16, and why not put the team that they're currently competing for that final spot for, the Calgary Flames.
Yeah, I've done the exact same thing. +5.
They're coming good at the right time, man.
Mm. No, they really are. They only played 2 games this week, but they win both, beating LA and then Vancouver and OT, doubling their shots. So, like you said, they're coming good at the right time, and they're probably your favorite to take the spot, seeming how Jets are on the
I
slide and whatnot.
I would say, considering they're the opposite of Nashville, so they play Nashville and Winnipeg, so they play the two teams that they're fighting for, but they also come up against Anaheim, Chicago, Vancouver, and San Jose. So unlike Nashville, who are playing basically all top 10 sides, they're playing the bottom 10 sides, and three of them are the bottom four. So yeah, I think if you're looking at it, you're probably saying the Calgary Flames at the moment are the favorites to make the playoffs.
Mm. Yeah, I don't have too much more to add on the Flames there. So,
Mm.
without
Well,
further ado, then I guess we'll move on to 15. Um,
yep.
this was a hard 15. I feel like from this point on, all these teams are playing somewhat decent hockey at some sort of level, and it is the New York Islanders.
Yeah, I think it's pretty rude to have them at 15 at this point with some of the hockey they're playing, but I definitely feel like we're geared up for a good playoffs. When you look at the 15 teams that are to come, even Calgary, like Nashville, they're playing decent hockey. For the 15 teams to come, they're all playing pretty pretty good hockey against some pretty high caliber teams. So yeah, I'm excited for this playoffs because I think all these teams are sort of they're playing good hockey at the right time of year.
Mm.
And I don't think it's something we see too often.
Yeah, well, they start off the week well. They beat Devils. They go to shootout, beat the Capitals. The only hiccup is they get a 5-0 shutout against Tampa after a couple days break, and that's why they slide just a little bit for me. And the Devils win. Um, they played well. It wasn't super convincing. Some very ordinary defense at one point with one of Palmieri's goals, but on the Devils side. But I feel like they're playing a good hockey. -2, it's not really on them. It's just I feel like a couple of teams are playing just that a little bit better hockey, but they're still definitely strong.
Yeah, for sure. I think they've pretty much secured their playoff spot at this point. I'm not too worried about them. I know I know that they could still potentially be kicked out, and they do have to sort of be on their best. Otherwise it could go wrong for them. But for me at this point, I think they've definitely wrapped up their playoff spot with the hockey they're playing because it's hard to see with how well they're playing for them to be the one that gets kicked out. So um, yeah, I'm liking what they're doing, and I think with the likes of Sorokin as well, because I think he's been an absolute brick wall for them this year. I know. I don't know if he played today against Tampa. I'm assuming he did. Um, yeah, he got. I know. Yeah, he got kicked out of kicked out of the net tonight. But for most of the year, he's been pretty solid for them. So I think with him in net and some of the defenders they've got on that blue line, they could definitely be a tough team to face in the playoffs.
Yeah, no, you're not wrong there.
All right, let's move on to 14 and another team that's they're playing some good hockey, but they've slipped as of late. And I think this is why they find themselves in this position, but they've still wrapped up a playoff spot, and I think they're going to be real interesting. I've got Seattle Kraken.
Okay, I was wondering how far you'd go with them, and no, you've done exactly what I did. -3 for
Hey,
me as well.
there we go. Yeah, it's just, you know, they get a good win against Anaheim, but that's a game you've got to win. But they lose 5-1 to Minnesota. They lose 3-1 to the Kings. Two teams in the West. Yeah, I kind of want to see a bit more from them, and I think they've sort of been slipping the last 2 or 3 weeks. Basically being around that 500 mark or below for most of it. So yeah, for me, they're having a bit of a slide at probably one of the worst times, but they do come home against some reasonably easy um, competition before going into the back to back against Vegas to finish the season. So I think the next 5 games they can use to get their confidence back, get a few wins up their sleeve, and then really take it to Vegas. Because if they make it past the first round, Vegas is probably a team that they'll come up against.
Mm. Yeah, no. One thing I'm very impressed with them though is the highest amount of shots they took in this week was 20 against Wild. Both other games they only conceded 19 shots, and I think that's a staple to their style of play that they've been playing. This beautiful 200-foot hockey, and I feel like they're still playing it. They're definitely outplaying their opponents. I feel like a lot of time, but I don't know if it's the goaltending that's allowing goals on small amount of shots, or it's just lapses
It's always
at
been the worry.
certain points. But I'm still really enjoying their style of hockey and how they're playing. So that's why I'm still pretty high on them, even though they are down at 14 at this point. but I'm still very high on them to probably have this at the lowest point of their season at this point.
Yeah, yeah. I think I think they're a good side, but again, yeah, we've spoken about it a lot. That goaltending situation is yeah, it's interesting to say the least. So, but no, look, I'm that it's a series that whoever they play in the first round, I'll be watching
Mm,
very carefully because I'm interested to see if what they've put up this season is what they put up during playoffs. Because I think if they do, they're going to be a tough team to play in the playoffs. They've got a nice balance of good offensive hockey, good tough gritty hockey at times as well, um, and then they can play a good defensive game as well. So they're a pretty well balanced team. Just have some goaltending issues that let them down from time. So yeah, be
alrighty.
interesting.
On to P13, I have the Florida Panthers. +2 for
Oh,
me. They're doing good. Not sure where you've got
I
them.
got them at 12. Yeah, I got them at 12, just one above.
All right, so you've jumped on them. You're a little bit lower last week, and then you've gone a little bit higher. Um,
I've gone the heart. Yep.
yeah, you don't know what you're doing. Nah, nah, it's alright. They've been doing good hockey. They've 6-4 in their last 10. They started off the week with a loss, and then they go and win the next three. So they're on a 3-game win streak. That included Toronto, Montreal on the back-to-back from Toronto, then Columbus. So 2 easy games, and then but they beat Toronto in OT, even though Toronto outshot them by 11. And look, the only hiccup was the Florida OT, not OT, sorry, just a straight up loss against a team that you are racing for the playoffs in a sense. Though it's really trying to jump the Pittsburgh Penguins, which they played an extra game than the Penguins, but they've got a point over the Penguins. So it
Mhm.
looks like with our power rankings, the momentum and everything at the moment, it looks like they may jump it. And I can see why you have them at 12 because they've been on this sort of good streaking hockey for a while now. But I have them at 13 now. I'm pretty happy with their 13.
Yeah, yeah. I definitely think them and the team that you've probably gotten 12 and I've probably gotten 13, to be honest. Um, Yeah, they're a bit hit and miss at the moment, both these teams anyway. Florida have sort of put together some good wins, had a couple of rough losses here and there, but look, the next two games are against Buffalo and Ottawa. You win both those games, you kick out two of the competing teams. That's how simple it is for them. You win your next two games against Buffalo and Ottawa, and you are now only facing Pittsburgh. So yeah, it's in their hands at the moment. They are yeah, it comes down to if they can beat Buffalo and Ottawa, and then how can they finish off? Because they've got some tough games to finish off with. They come up against Toronto and Carolina. Definitely not how I would want to finish my season, given that they're potentially in that last game. They have to win to make playoffs. So there's a few other teams I would much rather play in that last game, but at the end of the day, when you don't play to expectations, you leave yourself open to be in this sort of position. So yeah, be interesting to see what we get from them.
Yeah. Alrighty.
All right, let's go to P13 for me. I've got the Dallas Stars. Still amazes me that they're like even with the slip they had, they're still really comfortable in that third spot and potentially even going to take the first spot in the Central. Um,
Yeah. No, they're basically. It feels like they've been like a 500 team all season at some points. For a
yep.
streak there, but look, they had a easier schedule this week. Chicago and Arizona winning both games. They only conceded 18 shots against both of them. And then on a back-to-back from the Arizona game there versus the Avs and lose 5-2. They took it to them, and it's on a back-to-back, so I couldn't take too much away from them in that game because of the back-to-back. And that's why I haven't put them below Florida at the moment. I couldn't warrant putting them any further down, but I don't feel like they warranted going further up either.
Yeah, it's a hard one, isn't it? Because like they beat Chicago, they beat Arizona, but you sort of go, well, yeah, they should have beaten those teams. So it's like you're like when a team wins, you usually go, oh yeah, that's a plus for them. That's a tick. But when you're beating Chicago and Arizona, it's it's tough to give them two ticks, and then they lose to Colorado, who is a team that they are fighting for. Like they win that game, they're top of their division. That's how big that game was. And I get it's on a back to back, and that kind of sucks. But yeah, you've got to sort of push through that, and that's probably a playoff game of some sort for them today, and they just didn't get the job done. Albeit it was the two empty net goals that they conceded um sort of cost them, but I don't know. I'm interested to see what Dallas can do because I feel like they're trending in the wrong direction at the wrong time.
Yeah, no, I see your point there. Alrighty, I'm pretty sure I don't have to look at my rankings to see who's at 11. It is Tampa Bay Lightning,
Oh no,
and
I think you fucked up there. I think you've got someone else. I think you should definitely look.
nah,
Nah,
I
I've got
looked.
I've
I
got them
looked.
there.
You made me look. All right, nah, it's nah. They win all three games this week. Pretty good games as well. Shutting out Carolina 4-0, beating the Capitals 5-1, and beating the Islanders 5-0. So they only concede one goal for the week in three games and score 14 goals. And look, it's a bit flip flop from what they were doing the week prior. So
Yep.
I've only gone to 11. I feel like this is where they should be at the moment. You've done the exact same thing, so it seems like someone's got my back on that one.
Yeah,
And
100%. I agree with
mm,
you on that for sure.
yeah, like they're turning it up. Only a few more games in the season to go. They've secured playoffs. Uh, it's basically just making sure you're looking after those injuries at this point, and that's probably the say from 10th position onwards as well. Looking after your players and their injuries and managing them.
Yeah, exactly. It's a tough predicament, right? Like you look at last week, and I think we said it, last week. It's hard to sort of to you have to push them down in the power rankings, obviously, but it's hard to be too critical of them because you know how good Tampa are. Like Tampa are a good side, and they've won two cups, been in the last three Stanley Cup finals. But like, yeah, and they've wrapped up their playoff spot. They know who they're playing. They know that Toronto are going to have the home ice advantage basically at this point. There's no real point for them to go all out crazy in the last 20 games of their season. So yeah, look, I like what we saw this week because they beat some really good sides and they beat them well. So they're showing that they've still got it's not just a complete capitulation. It's not because they're tired that they lost, that they had that really bad week. It's just, I guess, yeah, they have an off week because maybe some of the players are taking it a bit easier, getting ready for playoffs. But then they come out and they show that they've still got what it takes and they are ready to go. I'm interested to see how they finish the year because I wouldn't be surprised if we see a couple of more games where maybe they just get blown out because they're taking it a bit
Yeah,
easier. Um, and I
yeah,
think they need to.
yeah. I can see that happening, and yeah, I can see them trying to manage that. It depends how much game time you also want to give your goaltending and Vasilevsky because they're pretty much going to ride him the whole way. So
Hmm.
I don't know
For
how
sure.
how you manage that, but it'll be interesting to see how much they do manage and how many games he gets going in.
Look at this point, I feel like he needs to play some of
Oh
the
yeah,
games,
play some, but I'm just saying
but
to
you
see do you play one, miss the other, play one, miss the other type situation.
well, that's yeah. I think if anything, I'd go because he played all three games this week. That's
Mm,
the craziest thing about it, right? Like he doesn't have many nights off. And even before that, he played the game against Boston. Like he plays a lot. So I don't know. Like, mate, does he play 3 out of the 5 games, or does he play 2 out of the 5 games? I feel like he's gonna play at least two, but you wouldn't want to burn him out, would you?
Mm. I I guess you got to ride the hot hands in a sense and try and keep it hot, but you don't want to burn out
Mm.
the hot hand as well. But I
No,
guess we can
exactly. Not when playoffs are around the corner.
move on to the top 10 now, starting with you.
It's a top 10.
A really rough top 10
Yeah.
this week, in a sense.
Oh, don't. Yeah. I mean, yeah, you could, apart from probably maybe the top two teams, you pretty much just throw these guys in a bucket, pick one out at a time, and yeah, you'd still have a top 10 that makes sense.
Yep.
Because yeah, they could go anywhere at this point. But I start mine off with the Minnesota Wild, and I feel like it's a slap in the face to Minnesota. So any Minnesota fans, I apologize. It's not you. It's
It's me. No, no.
just
No.
yeah, it's just the top 10. Like, I don't know what else to do. Like, I think Minnesota are a really good side, and having them at 10 seems wrong, but also having them above any of these other teams also seems wrong.
Mm.
Um, it's
And
hard.
and look, they had a hard week. The Seattle Avs and Vegas. They beat the first two. They lose to Vegas. My only question with the Wild is they're getting outshot in every game, and look, they have a negative 44 shot differential. It's the worst in the league, besides next to Anaheim's negative 43. So that's my big concern with them. That's why they moved down for me, even though they get two good results in the Kraken and the Avs wins, and then they lose to Vegas. So that's why I couldn't move on them. Is just I'm not completely sold on them yet.
Oh, they don't put up a lot of shots at all, this Minnesota side. I am even looking at the week prior. They put up 20 odd against Chicago, 20 odd, and got outshot against Philly, 20 odd, and got know how to def is really good. And they know how to score from limited opportunities. Yeah, when you're a
It seems your mic keeps cutting in and out.
4 or 5 goals,
Just wondering, have you done anything there?
uh, yeah, probably.
You
Yeah.
pressing some buttons.
Most likely. It's all good. I think I'm back now. But yeah, like I'm interested to see, yeah, how they go, because it's the shots that they allow that concern me. I don't mind seeing a team only shoot 25 to 30 shots a game when they can score, because they're not just shooting for the sake of shooting, they're shooting from high danger areas, and they're shooting when it matters most. But it's allowing 40 plus shots regularly. That's my concern.
Hmm. Alrighty. On to P9. Once again, team feels weird having it here. New York Rangers. They they moved
Yeah.
down one. They didn't have the best of weeks. They only win one game. It was against the Blue Jackets. They lose to the Devils in a close game, and then on the back to back from that game, they face Buffalo, go to OT, and lose it in OT. I really, it's hard to give them negatives. They feel they're playing good in every game. It's just based on results, really, at this point.
Mm.
And that's why they go up P9 for me this week. Moving down one is getting 3 out of 6
Well,
points.
this is how crazy it is, right? They beat the New Jersey Devils, and they're probably in front of the New Jersey Devils on this list.
Oh, yeah.
Like, that's how close this list is. And like, it's one of those things. Like, the Devils lose to Rangers, the Devils are probably ninth this week. It's just one of those things that, depending on what you do or who you win against, anything could sort of happen. They were significantly up, but I think they were outplayed against the Devils. It was a really good defensive game, but it's just one of those things. Like, they win that game, they climb the ladder. They lose the game, they drop, even though they're playing good hockey. So yeah, it's an insane top 10.
Alrighty, P8 for you.
P8 for me. So I've got to actually check this because yeah, I don't like doing this. This is disgusting. Um, Probably one of the better performing teams in the league over the past 3 weeks before this week, but they had a pretty shithouse week. And they dropped 4 positions. It's the Vegas Golden Knights.
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure if you're talking about another team or not. Um,
Well, I could have been, to be honest. There's a couple of them.
but I've done the same thing. I'm moving a little bit
Yeah.
further because there was a coin flip between Vegas and LA, as I said last week. But like you said, they just have a little bit worse a week compared to the rest in the top 10. They only get one win. They lose 7-4 against Edmonton with 22 shots. They go and lose an OT against San Jose, which I don't think you can do in this top 10 to warrant being
Hmm.
above the other teams. But they then go and beat the Wild 4-1. So, yeah, it's really just that San Jose game that really pulls them down here. And
Yeah.
that's just how competitive this top 10 is that one little blemish and then you move down.
Oh, exactly. And I think that's, it, it says a lot, right? Like if that loss was against a better side, um, a side, probably one of the sides in the probably top 20, you potentially don't drop Vegas as much. But when it comes against a side like San Jose, it's tough. It's definitely tough, especially seeing they got outplayed quite significantly against Edmonton as well. So, all right, moving on to number 7.
All right, number 7. Team that's been lowest they've been in a long time. I feel like is the Carolina Hurricanes. Moving down.
Another team sliding at the wrong time, hey?
Yeah, like they're sliding with results. I still think they're playing really good hockey. They shootout lose
Yep.
against Boston. They get 4-0'd by Tampa, though they outshoot them by like 33%. Um, they lose by a goal to Detroit, even though they outshoot them by 33%, which is a staple of what Carolina's done all season. And then they
Yep.
go and
Outshoot and lose.
and then yeah, then they out 3-0 Montreal, shooting 50, only conceding 14 shots. I think they're playing still really good hockey. I still think they're doing what they've been doing all season. It's just a bit more of a blemish this week in the shootout loss with Boston, losing 4-0 to Tampa, then losing the Red Wings game. So that's why they moved down another two outside the top 5, which I don't think they've been outside for probably 3-4 months.
No, it's probably been a while. Do you know what's crazy to me?
What's that?
Since the All-Star break, they have been involved in 7 shutout games. They have won 4 and lost 3. That's a big stat, man. Like it's just yeah, they're really good defensively sometimes, but and because this is the big thing, right? Carolina have a really good defense, and their goaltending's the question, and we've spoken about that. But um, their other issue comes down to what you weren't very happy about at the end of the trade deadline, was the fact that they didn't address their goal shooting needs. And I know they lost in the Maya race and all the rest of that, but it shows, right? They've been involved in 7 shootouts. 4 of them they won because, they're a very good defensive side, but they've been shut out 3 times because they lack that goal scoring, that extra goal scorer, and it hurts them sometimes.
Yeah, well, like
And
put
that's
it put it
that's
into
my worry.
perspective. They -3 in goal differential this week. Only put up 8 goals in 4 games, so that's 2 goals
Hmm.
a game. But you put in an extra 56 shots than your opponent
Hmm.
this week. The next highest in the league is 43, so an extra 13 above the next in the league. Um, and you're only putting up eight goals and 151 shots. It's just not good enough. They needed a sniper, something like a Phil Kessel, something like a Timo Meyer, like just that pure sniper. That's your role. Just put it in the net. And they didn't go get it. And that if they don't get to the Eastern Conference Final this year, I'll put it down solely to that and their goaltending.
I think you're on the money because I think they're the two biggest areas that they struggle with, and the rest of them is fantastic. The rest of the side's great. They need they were hoping that Anderson would be that goaltender, and maybe he can be if he stays healthy.
Mm, mm.
Um, but they've got such a good defense in front of him. They just need again, they just need a goaltender to stand up and somebody to just help out in the goal scoring department. And then, yeah, like the sky's the limit for him. But yeah, it's just I think that's where they're going to struggle,
Mm.
and that's my biggest concern for them.
Yeah, no, mine too. You ready? P6.
All right, let's move on to P6 and another team that you could say has had a bit of a slide, but it's only results based because they're still playing some of the best hockey I think in the NHL at the moment. It's the New Jersey Devils. Um,
Yep.
yeah, like the record doesn't look great. When you look at it, right? Their last 10, I think they're 4-4-2 or something in the
Yep.
last 10. But you look at the games they've lost, apart from the game against the Islanders, which, that 5-1, that's two empty net goals. That's the reason. That's the first time they've lost by more than three goals all year. And it was two empty nets that caused it. They were outplayed. I will say that they were outplayed by the Islanders 100%. But they don't get outplayed often. That happened there, and they still could have won that game. They had a couple of post chances and a few others. So they they are well and truly either in every single game they play, or they are the dominant team in just about every single game they play. And I think that's what I'm liking about them. They have lost a few games lately and all the rest of it. It's generally been off the back of something they've done, something that they've switched off for 2 minutes, and it's cost them. It's something that they're doing, not the opposition. And generally with stuff like that, you can fix that and you can fix it pretty quickly. So I'm still liking how they're playing. I'm still liking what they're doing. I still think that if Vanacek can stand up in net for them and they can get control of those defensive lapses that they have from time to time, they're going to be a very tough team
Yeah.
come playoffs. It's
Yeah.
just gonna, yeah. There's just those two question marks for me about them.
No, I think they're in the same boat as Carolina. It's why I've put them both next to each other because I feel like they're little buddies in this department where they're outplaying their opponents in a sense, but then lose the game. Um, and
Uh-huh.
generally, it's on their own front, and that's what I'm seeing from both these teams. It's why I've got them where they are. I think New Jersey are just doing that a little bit better because they've got that goal scoring potential. And look, both these teams have goaltending questions. Look, they had to bring up Blackwood and put down a Curious Mead purely because of the type of contracts. One's one way, one's two way, and that's why Kieran Schmid goes down, even though he's the better goalie, I would say, than Blackwood.
Hmm.
And that would be my concern as well, because I wouldn't really want to take Blackwood into the playoffs. I would prefer Kieran Schmid, even though he's young and this is really his breakout year. But yeah, it's really goaltending situations for these two teams. But that's why I had Devils above. They had a better week, winning 2 out of 3. Uh, Granted, one was against Chicago, but they got a good win against the Rangers in a very pivotal game for the home ice advantage, or even just hunting down Carolina for not even
Yeah,
getting that
exactly.
game. So
Yeah.
yeah, not much blemish. It was just the New York Islanders blemish. That was it for me. But
Yeah, for sure.
with that said, I guess we'll move on to the top five. Starting with the top five for me, I've got the Edmonton Oilers, team that has
Mm,
been hot.
yeah, probably the hottest team in the NHL right now, and I've agreed with you there. I've got them at five. I think this would be the first time that they've been in the top five. I don't think we've seen them even close to the top five, to
Mm.
be honest, before this.
Yeah.
Um,
So,
oh yeah, that was sixth. That was sixth. Second week in, so they've been
oh yeah,
around that.
early on.
Yeah, very early on.
But
But
yeah,
yeah,
they
they
win all four this week. They what nine? What is it? Just 9-0-1, just to make sure I got it right. Two of the games were easy in Arizona and who was it? Anaheim. But they did beat Vegas on a back to back from the Arizona game, which was really good. And then they beat LA 2-0, shutting them out. My big concern with this team is still the amount of goals they concede. Uh, it's
yeah.
still it's still that defense, still Darnell Nurse and whatnot. But they've definitely turned it on. Like I said, one of the hottest teams in the league. Exciting team to watch, and I sometimes don't like how they play. It's that really counter-attacking hockey. Kind of reminds me um, of like Leicester City from soccer years ago. Where it's just like we all sit back and then one guy runs forward because he's fast, and it's kind of like there's McDavid. He's really fast. So yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Or wait to get on the power play.
yeah,
Generally that's their game style. But no, I have to agree with you. My qualms and why I couldn't put them any higher was they concede a lot. We're talking about a team that's just shut their last two games out. But that's one of my points, to be honest. It feeding off the West,
hmm
feeding off of the low ranked West as well, which they've done, and they do. They feed off of them so well. It's very rare that they'll lose a game against those, which is good. It's a good thing, right? Like you shouldn't be dropping points against these teams, but they do. They put them to the absolute sword, which is good in one aspect, but also they concede a lot of goals against some of these poor sides as well. Like, 4 goals against Arizona, 3 goals the week before, 4 goals against San Jose. It's just it's a lot.
yeah,
And I think they're 11th. They've conceded the 11th most goals in the comp.
yeah.
But
They
on
only
the other
they,
end of that, they've scored the most.
yeah in the league, yeah. By
Yeah.
a substantial margin as well from number two.
Yes.
But that's basically it. And I always knew their standings were always going to be a little bit inflated being in the Pacific. Um,
Yeah.
and I feel like that's what's happening just a little bit here because you're looking at Carolina, New Jersey, like they've had to verse each other multiple times. And feed off each other. They have to verse the Rangers. They have to verse the what do you call the Atlantic more,
Yep.
Boston and whatnot. So like I feel like the schedule plays a little bit into this, but this team is definitely
Mm.
hot. But that's why I couldn't move them up. It's just not sold on their defense by any means.
Yeah, for sure. I think, that's the question. I think Ekholm has helped their defense a lot.
Hmm.
Um, but it's still definitely a concern. I think we've said it time and time again. I mean, you put McDavid in the playoffs and McDavid and Draisaitl can pretty much do, they could do anything at this point. But I think, yeah, that's the big concern is will their goaltenders stand up? Will their defenders do what they need to do? And can they get any sort of anything out of because they're bottom six? Because at the end of the day, the teams are going to target McDavid. They're going to target McDavid in the playoffs.
Oh,
It's as simple
I
as
would,
that.
man. If you're getting the Stanley Cup and you have the Stanley Cup chance, man, like I'd be laying him out. I don't care if he's the greatest of all time type candidates or anything like that. If I have a chance at a cup, like lay the man out, hit him.
Yeah.
He skates so fast, he's going to injure himself. Like,
Yeah, and
yeah.
that's the scary thing, isn't it? Right? Like he Edmonton are one bad injury away, or one injury that puts McDavid out for the next 2 months away from pretty much getting swept.
Hmm.
Like that's and I know there'll be people going, "Oh, we've got others," but you take McDavid out of this side, and I think Edmonton struggle to make playoffs.
I don't think they do make
Um,
playoffs. I say
I
straight up.
I think the only reason that maybe they do is because they're in the Pacific, but
Mm.
honestly. Yeah, you take McDavid out of this side, and this side falls down pretty quickly. So, yeah, that's my concern for them. I think McDavid's been pretty durable, which has been good, but it really takes one bad play involving McDavid, and yeah, Edmonton find themselves in a bit of trouble.
Alrighty, moving
But
on.
they're playing well. I'll give them credit. I think that's one thing to point out. They are playing some good hockey. They're getting some good wins. They have improved with the addition of Ekholm. I just think there's still a couple of areas that are very questionable with them.
Hmm.
But yes, let's move on to number 4, and it's another team with a lot to prove come playoffs. Um, the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Alrighty, same thing for me. +3 for
I
me.
thought you would. It's, I mean, they, it's tough. I kind of looked at them and had them at number 4 and went, how the hell did I get Toronto at 4? Um, they don't get me wrong, they're playing good hockey there and against some reasonably good caliber sides. But yeah, it's interesting. I still think this side's quite good. I think they're geared up for a big playoffs. Um, and I'm interested to see how they finish the year because they've got Tampa the second to last game before playoffs start. So that game's almost going to be a preview, a trailer, if you would, to what we're going to see come playoffs. So
It's either that or their teams hold back what they're going to
yeah,
do, and
they
then
they
yeah,
don't want to show they don't want to show their cards.
yeah.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting, isn't it? Like, yeah, it could go either way. It could be like this is how we're gonna come out come playoffs and go bang, or it could be like, yeah, we're gonna put our AHL side out there and give nothing away.
Mm.
But
No, they got
yeah,
five
I'm
out of
I'm
six
interested.
points. They definitely deserve the move up. Their only blemish is losing in OT to Florida, and then they only conceded 5 goals in 3 games, shutting out Ottawa and today. Like, it's definitely deserved. They haven't had really many blemishes this season, being up around this area for a while. But it's warranted with the slide of like New Jersey and Carolina, and even Vegas.
Yeah, I
Alrighty.
mean Vegas has had one bad week. I wouldn't call it a slide, but
Oh,
yeah,
but
it's
you know what I mean.
interesting. They've dropped 4 spots. Uh, but we said this top 10 is it's crazy. Like, I think any of these teams would warrant being at fourth on this list at this point. Like this, Minnesota, you could put it 4, and I don't think there's a huge argument to be made about it. So yeah, it's pretty tight. But yeah, let's move on to number 3.
Number 3 for me, I've got the LA Kings, moving up one just to replace the Vegas Golden Knights. They didn't have the
Mm-mm.
greatest of weeks. They only 4 games. They win 2, they lose 2. Conceding a lot of goals against St. Louis, so winning 7-6. They lose to Calgary by a goal in a close game. They lose to Edmonton, getting shut out even though they played better. And then they defeat Kraken, um, 3-1 with 19 shots. So look, they've been good. I don't think there's anything to really pull them apart here. I feel like they're competing in every game. It's kind of similar to the New Jersey Carolina speech, even Toronto speech, that every game they're competing. Just some games they'll just lose, just by that little bit. And look, it's very high for them, at number 3. I think it's somewhat warranted. I know, like we said with Edmonton being Pacific, get to feed off the Pacific team, so their standings may be a little bit inflated, but I'm happy with them at 3 at the moment. I don't see any blemishes from this week too dramatically to bring them down.
Nah, me either. I think, that game against Edmonton, I thought they outplayed them somewhat. Yeah, in patches. They were very competitive. It just sort of came down to a just a brilliant shorthanded goal from McDavid, which, we've said that's pretty much the speech every time when you're talking about Edmonton. Um, yeah, other than that, they've been a really solid team all year. Um, said it before, I had some qualms with how they were playing early on. Still have a couple of qualms with some defensive aspects and their goaltending, but yeah, they're definitely well worth the number 3 spot. That's for sure. All right, let's move on to number 2. And does the one loss for Boston this week kick them out of the top spot?
I
He
just filled it
says
in.
no.
I just filled
He
it
says
in.
no. Yeah, let's not fuck us around. I think you'd be stupid to take the Boston out of the number 1 spot. I don't think they're gonna get kicked out of the number 1 spot for the rest of the year. I'll just say it now.
I think I'm just leaving. Even if they've lost all of their games, I'm leaving them number one. I'm pretty much
Just
sticking
leave
with
them
it.
at, yeah, that their season they've had absolute warrants it. But in number 2 is the Colorado Avalanche, and wow, I mean, the season that they had for probably the first half-ish, it, I mean, we know they have it in them, and they had some injuries and all the rest of it, but far out, have they come back with just at the perfect time, right? They've just found their rhythm at the best time. It's
Mm,
just okay, cool. We've had injuries. We just need to be in with a hunt, and we'll be fine. And then they come in, they go bang, yeah, cool.
yeah,
They did feed off of those lowly teams that we've spoken um, about the other teams in Arizona and Anaheim. They lose to Minnesota 4-2, which was probably their only blemish this week. But then they beat Dallas 5-2. So yeah, I don't know. I'm really really worried about this team and what they can do in the playoffs again, because that we could see the second back to back in in 4 years. So we could
yeah.
actually see two teams going back to back and back to back within the 4 year period.
Well, I think like Boston's a number one. Like you can't move Boston from number one. I feel like the same with Avalanche. You can't move Avalanche for number two. I think if you got them any lower, honestly, I think you're a bit deluded. I think it's a like these two teams are in a league of their own at the moment. The rest
Hmm.
from like 3 to 10, even 3 to 11, because of how Tampa turned it on this week, you could say interchangeable, sure. But yeah, this team definitely the biggest solid number two there. Uh, Definitely one of the hottest teams. It's annoying to see these teams constantly like Tampa did it, now Avs are doing it. You would have liked to see a little bit of rotation of this dominance, but
Yeah.
they're one of the most exciting teams to watch though, so I don't mind that.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the thing as well. Like they are exciting. They're so powerful. They're no guarantee to win to go back to back either. So we might get a bit of a change up, but yeah, look, it is incredible to think yeah, like at the moment, if I'm going who's the best in the West and who's the most likely to make the playoffs, Stanley Cup playoff, it's Colorado. 100%, hands down. Colorado are the team in the West, I'd be picking to make the playoffs every day, Stanley Cup
Yeah,
final every day of the week.
yeah. No, I think you'd have to
All
be
right.
pretty deluded to have him in your power rankings any lower. Uh,
Yep,
Number
for
one,
sure.
shock
All right.
horror,
Yep.
big reveal.
Who knew?
I don't even know what to
Yep.
say on this team. Like, what more? Like, they just keep breaking records. Um,
Huh.
it's just a record-breaking season. The, I don't know what else to say. Like, they win 3 out of 4. Um, they, I guess the only other thing is that their games were going to OT or shootout. That's basically it. Shootout against Carolina, OT against Columbus. They lose by a goal against Nashville, and then they beat Pittsburgh. So I don't know. There's nothing really blemishes to say here. They outshoot, they outscore, they outdefend. They just honestly the most perfect team I've seen in a long time. They got
Yep.
good goaltending. Defense is solid, especially with Orlov and the things they've added there. I I don't know. They picked up Saka at the start of the season. Has been amazing for him. Yeah, anything short of a Stanley Cup win is basically failure at this point for this team, and that's
Yeah.
a big burden.
Yeah. It is. It is, and it does. It concerns me that we might potentially see first round exit for them, and that would just be absolutely disgusting for the
Honestly,
season they've had.
if that happens, I like if NHL doesn't change the way they do the playoffs system after that, I would be disgusted in them. If Boston
Yeah,
bow out in the first round.
yeah, it's a tough one because the thing is that they're probably gonna play the team that they would have potentially played if it was a 1-16 anyway. But yeah, just I don't know. I guess this is the issue you've got, right? Like you look at the for instance, New York Islanders or Florida, and you're like, well, I would much rather play pretty much anyone from the West besides maybe two teams than those two teams. Like every day of the week, I'd rather play Winnipeg or LA Kings or even fucking Vegas, to be honest, over New York Islanders or Florida. And that's just like that's who Boston are most likely going to play. One of those two teams. Um, so yeah, it is. I don't know how you fix it, but look, if Boston are as good as they have been this year, they should get past just about anyone in the playoffs. So I don't think that's an excuse. I just think yeah, like it's one of those areas that yeah, it's questionable. Um,
Yeah.
you've got such an I'm not going to say such an easy passage because I do think the West have some reasonably strong sides, but it's an easier passage into the Cup final
Oh,
in the West
I'd
than
love
it
to be
is the
moved to the
East.
West any day of the week.
Yeah,
Because
for sure.
their strong teams have big holes in the way they play. Whereas I feel
Yeah.
like I know Devils are 6 and Canes are at 7 and whatnot, but basically every game they're outplaying their opponent. Same with Toronto. Like Tampa's turned it on now. Rangers have been doing the same thing, basically outplaying their opponents every game. But Oilers, I don't feel like that, though they've gone on this massive run. LA,
Hmm.
I don't always feel like that. They sometimes do these hiccups, but they've definitely turned it on now. But yeah, it's gonna be interesting. I can't wait for the playoffs. Honestly, wish it started now. Um, and yeah, if Boston don't make the Stanley Cup final, it's definitely a failure. I honestly think even if they don't win the cup, it's a failure. Like it's cup or nothing. And I think that's
Yeah,
the only yeah. And
after the season they've had, yeah, it's tough.
it's hard because like you look at it's like oh yeah, Toronto, it's Eastern Conference final basically or fail. um,
Yeah,
you've got Tampa is like
Carolina could
Tampa
be the
is
same,
yeah, Carolina's Eastern Conference final will fail. New Jersey has to at least get out the first round. Um, Rangers, we would have to say so too. Like, yeah, there's too many teams that shouldn't be failing out the first round.
but they're going to, and
Mm,
that's the crazy thing about it, right? Like you look at um, you know, Tampa, what is it? Tampa, Toronto, New Jersey, New York Rangers, unless Carolina slip into that. Um, or even out of those five teams with Carolina in it, two of them aren't going to the second round.
mm.
Like it's crazy. It's just yeah, like yeah, it's insane to think those teams who have played so well all year have the same chance to go to the second round as a team like the New York Islanders or Florida who have played so poorly, but most of the season, but they're going to slip into a playoff spot. And if they play their cards right, they yeah they beat Carolina and see you later. Yeah, it's tough, but it's what the playoffs are, and it's going to make for one hell of a first round, that's for sure. I think we could potentially see a lot of game sevens
Mm.
in the first round this year.
This
Um,
is the most excited I've been for playoffs. I think you got like 11, 12 teams here that like a very high substantial amount of teams that could go deep.
mhm.
I don't feel like I could say that about some other seasons where you're like, okay, here's your four
Yeah,
or five, and then the rest will bail out at some point.
yeah, you're not wrong. You're not wrong. I definitely feel like it's geared up probably better than it's been in some time. So yeah, it's going to be interesting. I'm definitely excited to watch it, and yeah, I mean, we'll be dropping a lot of videos around that time as well. So our coverage of Stanley Cup is going to be intense. Um,
Yeah.
one last thing I will say, I honestly would love to know. I'm not going to do the research on it because my God, it would take forever. But just to know, has a team ever finished in the power rankings at number one as often as Boston have this year? Because I don't think that's even possible. Like Boston
No.
have been number one pretty much every week outside of maybe three or four,
And even those are
and they haven't
questionable.
been.
Like there's
Yeah,
two weeks or so where it was questionable they should even be moved out of this top one spot.
well, exactly right. Like they've been a well-deserved number one all year, and I don't know, maybe back when Tampa had that ridiculously good run, and then they got swept by Columbus. I think
Yeah.
that'd probably be the last.
I'm sorry, it's just funny.
Sorry, Tampa fans. Um, yeah, PTSD on that. But yeah, I think that'd probably be the last time. Surely, I can't think of any team that's dominated and been this solid all season long, other than probably Tampa, and then maybe the 48 game Chicago back in 2012 in the
Mm.
lockout season. Yeah, it's crazy. It's one hell of a season. And that's why they remain at number one in our power rankings. But that's pretty much all from me. You got anything else to
No,
say?
I guess we can sign out there. So yeah, don't forget to like, subscribe, leave a comment below what you think of the rankings. We'll definitely be covering the playoffs coming up, so definitely keep an eye out for our videos and coverage of the playoffs and our breakdowns. And I don't know, I'm really excited for it. And yeah, just leave a comment, like, so don't forget to subscribe. Uh, and until then, I guess we'll see you guys to the next video.
Yeah, take care, guys.